Hey folks, this is Rambo Rouse and Rich Bergeron.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Tornado Tony Pennicott.
And I bet you can't wait for what the crystal ball says is going to happen Saturday night.
Yes, we have the big heavyweight fight. Not much boxing going on last week to recap. Not many names we over here across the pond would recognize, but I guess the big one was David Abanasian beating Liam Taylor over in the UK. And it's really not much else to talk about there for last week. Slow weekend for boxing, but this one we have a very big heavyweight fight. Talk about guys from the UK.
When you say very big, we're talking about big, literally and figuratively.
Yes.
Because not only is this figuratively a big fight, it's the heavyweight championship of the world. These are two big guys. I mean, when the guy that's 6'7" is the small guy, that's saying something.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's hope this time there's no 50-pound suit or whatever the hell we had last time. And a bunch of excuses at the end, and that's as clear-cut as it can be.
You certainly hope not. You know, I didn't get a chance to write a preview on this one. I mean, work the last few weeks has been, pretty busy, and then outside of work has been a little flustering for me. So I've been, a little bit, cranky, subtle, and yeah. But look at this, this is what keeps coming back into my mind. This is from a couple years ago. It was the night Wilder beat Ortiz, the first time I believe it was. And I was at the Lock Haven boxing show, and we went to the one place afterwards, after party, dinner and drinks, and I was sitting down with Jimmy McNally, who was the coach of the U.S. Naval Academy team. And Jimmy was talking about when he was one of the assistants for the 2008 Olympics team in Beijing. And we came up with the topic of Deontay Wilder, because Wilder was fighting, and then we were following it on our phones. And he looked at us and he goes, "You know what?" He goes, "The guy can punch like nobody I've ever seen in my life." He goes, "He's a guy that his jab, like they were using that Ivan Drago type of machine."
Yeah.
Where you can measure the person's punching power. He goes, his jab out registers a lot of guys' right hands, but he's a fraud. So I'm like, wait a minute, you just turned around and said the guy punches harder than any human being on the face of this earth, but he's a fraud? And he goes, yeah. He goes, because he never took the time to learn how to really box. And it reminds me of a guy that was like a great quarterback, and there was a couple of them that come to pass, but I used one of my Philadelphia guys from back in the day, Randall Cunningham. Randall Cunningham was the ultimate weapon. He was the guy that everybody wanted to watch because he could throw a ball farther than anybody could, had one of the best arms in NFL history, but he had that, he could scramble, he could run, he was exciting, but they said the problem was Randall never wanted to really learn how to be a quarterback, and they said, being the best running quarterback in the NFL is kind of like being the best cook in the Miss America pageant. Uh-huh. Yeah, it's not why you're there. And they would say they would give him films, the old big reel films, to watch that he could really learn. And what they said he would do was they would stick little tabs of paper inside the reel, figuring once the reel spun, the paper would fall out. And they said he'd return it a couple days later, paper's still in there. Another guy that was immensely talented that was a bust in the NFL was a guy named Jamarcus Russell. Jamarcus Russell had all the attributes in the world: big, strong, amazing arm, fast, athletic. They said he was had such a poor work ethic that they would give him VHS tapes, and he would come back and say that he was studying the team's blitz packages. The VHS tapes were blank. Mm-hmm. So that was the thing. Things now, does Deontay Wilder he fired Mark Reland, which was a controversial move. But is he now? Oh, is he really learning how to box? Is he learning how to better footwork, how to not be so sloppy, how to not fall out of position? Because those are the things, if you go back and look at some of his biggest fights, those were some of the things that were, his, downfalls.
Right.
He never really learned how to box. He had terrible footwork.
Also had some very weak structured hands and wrists. I mean, that's a big issue.
Four biggest fights.
Does he have like pins
the
in
two
his
fights with Luis Ortiz,
arms?
And he has the 2 fights with Tyson Fury. Now, the 2 fights with Ortiz, he won by knockout. One, I think, was in the 7th round. One, I think, was in the 10th round. But aside from those knockdowns, like he had the 2 knockdowns in the first fight, and that 1 in the second fight, the knockout in the second fight. Aside from those 3 punches, he lost every second of that fight.
Yeah.
In the fights with Tyson Fury, the first fight, he lost about every round except for the 6th when he scored a flash knockdown, and the 12th when he scored a major knockdown. And then the second fight, he lost from the opening bell to the time they stopped it.
Oh, yeah.
So the thing is, in his 4 biggest fights, except for the times when he was landing his bombs, he was getting thoroughly thrashed. Now, can he make the adjustments? At 34 years old, I can't see it, Now, can he land the bomb on Tyson Fury, who sometimes can get kind of sloppy and sometimes can get kind of cocky? Of course he can. And he can knock Fury out, and he can, regain his title, and all's well in the Deontay Wilder world again. But I just can't see it. I can't see it. Fury's a bigger man, and what he did last time was he imposed himself on Wilder. He used his superior size. He used his superior strength. He used his superior boxing IQ. And he pummeled him pillar to post. He didn't try to avoid him and make him look bad. He went to him, backed him up, and made him look bad. Can Wilder land the punch to score the knockout? Yes. But I don't see it. I see Fury, once again, mid-rounds, beating him down, stopping the fight. Tyson Fury, I'll say 5 rounds this time.
Well then, I'm going to go Tyson Fury decision because I just think he's going to concentrate on technical stuff, and Deontay's just going to look for his one shot every round. He's going to miss every opportunity, and Tyson Fury's going to really box him. I think Wilder's going to want to knock him out so bad to prove everybody wrong, he's going to make an idiot out of himself, chasing him around and trying to do it. So I think it's going to go the distance because I think Tyson's going to fight a very smart fight, but I could be wrong. But I do like Tyson over Deontay every day, all day. I just think he's gonna be smart about it because of that 12th round knockout that one time. He's a little bit probably better versed than most people who have beaten. Well, he's the only one who's beaten Deontay, but anybody who's fought Deontay who knows the power he has, Tyson Fury, he got up at like 8 in the count, and it was like he was on steroids all of a sudden. I just can never get that out of my mind when I think about who wins another fight with these guys. That miracle proves that, that was his best punches that Tyson Fury took. And now we're dealing with a Deontay Wilder who has like repaired wrists. He had like pins put in his hands and everything like that. So, we don't know how strong that is in competition. He hasn't been in competition since a long time. And Tyson Fury is just, the guy doesn't even have to be in shape to put on a good fight. He looks like a mess. He looks like a fat, out of shape mess, but he wins because he's a very smart boxer. So I think he's really going to use that intelligence factor to beat Wilder. And I don't care who Wilder brings in as a coach. He's not going to change that much to where this fight is a walk away for him. The only chance he has is a crazy knockout. And Tyson Fury will have to have his head on sideways and not be able to get up because this is the only way in my mind that it happens for Wilder. He just seems like he's too far gone. Like his best days are behind him. But, it might be
Yeah,
just
and
because
you're
of
right.
that
Like I said,
opponent.
it's hard
It's
to
just
teach an old dog new tricks.
too frustrating for him.
It's hard.
And it's
It's hard to teach an old dog new trick, especially a dog that was never easy to train in the beginning.
if you put it that way, yeah. Gonna start calling you Yoda. Instead of
Who, me?
Yeah. That's a good one. All right, we also we got to get Tom's take now. We can't let the psychic not weigh in. What do you think, Tom? Thomas Paget, are you with us?
Did he put us on mute?
I don't know. Says Tom. Tom, can you hear me now? 2 of 3 in the call. Oh, maybe he did drop off. Good thing we checked. Mic check, Tom. Sometimes you gotta wonder why he doesn't chime in. Hello.
Yes, we're back.
There he is.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, everything just clicked off, and I tried to call back, didn't get through, so I figured, well, wait it out here.
I think I got my phone in the other room.
So Tom, did you hear any of our breakdown?
No.
So we were talking about
I'm
Fury
going to
versus
summarize.
Wilder.
It's hard for me because I like to use words. Basically, what I said was we were doing our preview and predictions, what we think is going to happen this weekend. And one of the things I said, about Deontay Wilder is as Jimmy McNally from U.S. Naval Academy called him a couple years ago, said he's a fraud. And amazing puncher, one of the best punchers in history, but he's a fraud. So it's almost like an oxymoron. One of the greatest at something, but maybe a terrible boxer. Terrible footwork, terrible technique. And the thing is, he's about 34, 35 years old now. Can you teach an old dog new tricks, especially a dog that never really learned any tricks to start with, except that one punching power trick? I see, obviously Wilder can land that punch, and anybody he hits, he can knock out. Anybody. King Kong, he can knock out. Not just Luis Ortiz King Kong, but the gorilla King Kong. But Fury has that confidence. Unless he makes a mistake and gets careless, I see him using that superior size. And just, once again, coming to Wilder, forcing him on his heels where he can't set his feet to throw that punch, using angles to keep him off balance. And, unless he gets really stupid in there, I see Fury again, mid-round, somewhere between 5-6 rounds, just grinding him down and, taking a guy that's, maybe has that self-doubt, and finishing him off.
Right. I mean, it's like one of my favorite sayings. You get to a certain stage in life, not just in the fight world, but at a certain point in life, you pretty much are what you are. And with Wilder, I was watching the second fight again last night, and his legs, he should have been doing some squats. Man, his legs needed to notice that.
It was the suit, Tom. The suit was too heavy. Tell it.
Yeah, the suit. Well, he'd go down to Muscle. He would go down to Muscle Beach. He'd be arrested for no visible means of support. Putting him on, sends him to 6 months on the squat rack. He better gain a quarter inch. But I mean, it was just amateurs. I have to agree with you on. And plus, we've talked about the mental stuff, and I think that's a huge edge. Now, apparently, there was something that happened at the final press conference today. I didn't see it.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But the Tyson Fury seems, to me, damn near impervious to head games. Almost impervious to it. I've never seen him that rattled or taken out of his game plan. And with Deontay Okay, and then another thing, the more I think about getting rid of Mark Breland, what a bad move.
Yeah.
Oh,
What a bad move.
Terrible move.
I mean, I'll look at it. You notice now that JD's guy has kind of been, he's on the sidelines. Malik Scott, and they're saying the right things. Okay, we're not going to have him headhunting as much. We're going to be punching him in the arm and the body. Okay, all that stuff's good. Saying it's one thing, doing it something else. So I would agree with you. I don't see it going the distance, and I think Tyson will get on a roll, because if Wilder can't advance, as we've seen in that second fight, now how is he going to adjust? How do you learn how to develop that kind of movement in just a little over a year? How does that work? I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm about to learn. I will keep an open mind on it. Like you said, he's one punch away, but it's going to take more than that, I believe. Unless Tyson's so just full of himself. I don't think he is.
Right.
So, to watch.
And, Fury is a very confident guy. So sometimes, you always get worried, like, is he going to drop his hands or whatever? Is he going to make a mistake? But, is he going to get sloppy? But, I look at Wilder, I see him, and, for a guy that's got such amazing punching power, he looks, sometimes he looks like a kid you see in a gym flailing on a bag. And flailing on a bag. And, or if he gets somebody hurt, it's like all the training just, goes out the window. He's just so sloppy. And sometimes, like I said, he lands that punch. Sometimes like the last few times he didn't.
And again, if he were just 21 or something like that, he could stay in the gym and really get an older trainer to work with him a lot and work on that stuff. But now, I mean, it gets to a point, if you haven't learned it by now, good luck.
Right.
I mean, this stuff, again, boxing looks so easy when you see a true pro in action. And then you didn't show us. This takes years, and most people never get it. Years. So, that's my take.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Tom. It's like, I remember even like a lot of the years that I did it, there, and you would work on something, and you would, I mean, sometimes I have old VHS videos in South Philly, and they would actually video a lot of the stuff that I did, and it was so slow and so methodical, and I'm like, and there were days that I felt like so out of place, because I'm watching these guys in the ring, and they're sparring at such a high speed, and they're hitting the bag, and the trainer was like, you know what, I don't care that you've had a couple fights already, and I don't care that, you've been doing whatever at Lock Haven. He goes, no, because you were doing just enough to survive. You're not doing enough to win, just enough to survive. And he's like, we got to bring you to basics and how to fight like a short guy, how to learn how to see punches, slip punches, do all that. You're trying to mold with other guys that are better athletes and taller and longer reach, where you can't fight like them. And I remember looking at these guys, and I felt so inferior because I'm just doing these real slow shadow boxing, working on balance. But then, years later, it paid off. Where, Fury, maybe, or not Fury, Wilder, he was so engrossed with that power that it's like, boom, I don't got to learn nothing else, because, like I said in Rocky 4, whatever he hits, he destroys. But the problem is, what happens if you can't hit? You're clumsy, you're off balance.
Right. Maybe that power is a blessing and a curse.
Both. Exactly.
And we've all seen it happen. We've all seen it happen. We could be here half the night talking about it. I see no reason that that's not true here. If I'm wrong, we'll see.
Do we know
My
if who's
crystal
the
ball
betting favorite?
My crystal ball is shaking. Yeah, you're not wrong.
Who's the betting favorite? Do we know?
It's about 3-1.
It's 3-1.
It was as of last night, but I don't know. Maybe some stuff changed. I didn't check today. But I believe it was close to that. I think Wilder was in the plus in the 200s or something like that. And then Fury was close to minus 300, I think. So.
Okay,
but then again, that could have changed.
Right. Well,
let's see what just came out 4 hours ago. So it says, I don't know if this is an odd, but it says best bet. So it says, okay, Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, prediction odds, best bet. Gypsy King, Frank Sanchez among top picks. So, it's not telling me anything here. Oh, shit, I didn't know this one. Oh, wow. You know, I've been having so much, going on. There's a lot of things I didn't see here. So, okay. Wow. So, we have a rematch on the card between Adam Kanaki and Robert Helenius. That was right before COVID hit in, where, Kanaki was the big favorite, and Helenius stopped him.
Well, now, wait a minute. Now, what happened there? Dylan White was supposed to be, wasn't he supposed to, that's changed. That must have just changed.
huh. Yeah,
No, I mean, I thought this
so.
Kanaki-Helenius fight was a rematch. They're meeting in their own rematch. Helenius scored a major upset in their first meeting, the fourth round knockout. It was on
right.
Back in March 1st of 2020 or something like that. And,
right, but initially I thought it was Dillian White was and then the winner was going to it would be the WBC champ, I guess.
Huh.
Wow. So there must have been something just happened, and the babyface assassin stepped up. Well, good for him. Good for him.
And then we got somebody's always got to go at
He's
heavyweight.
going for the revenge.
F.A. Ajagba versus Frank
this
Sanchez.
one, we got Frank Sanchez and F.A. Ajagba. And Sanchez, Cuban fighter, you'll see many Cuban fighters named Frank. And Ajagba is
First Franklin.
Here. And I was really enthralled with, and he still is. But I think Ajagba has come down to earth a little bit after that guy walked out of the ring on him. And and then because even in the one fight he got knocked down, but
I remember that.
He won the fight, but he's shown some chinks in the armor.
And Frank Sanchez is the real deal. So well, this will be interesting.
And we've got
And
Edgar
we got
Berlanga, also
so
undefeated at super middleweight.
270, Wilder plus 220.
He's fighting Marcelo Esteban Caceres.
So that means nothing's changed a whole lot.
And we got the American versus Russian fight of the week here, too.
7.5.
We got the Rocky IV fight of the week on here. A guy named Jared Anderson at heavyweight, 9-0, fighting Vladimir Tereshkin, who is 22-0-1. One draw. So he's not a machine.
Wow, that's a nice. I don't know much about Tereshkin, but that's a nice step up for Jared Miller, because he's another very interesting prospect.
Jared Anderson.
For a young guy, big guy, and that's a really interesting step up for him.
We got fights at the 2300 Arena on Saturday, too. Big old featherweight main event. 12-1 Donald Smith against 11-2 Elijah Pierce. Nothing really too spectacular on the undercard. And actually, we got more boxing news and we got big boxing matches this weekend. But there is another one in the United Kingdom. Brad Foster, undefeated, 14-0-2 at super bantamweight, fighting Jason Cunningham. Probably no relation to Steve, but he's 29-6. with a couple belts on the line there. And then we've got another somebody who's got to go fight. Ikao Esseman, 15-0, fighting Danny Ball, who's 10-0-1 for a couple British titles. And there's some journeyman here. Callum Johnson, 19-1, fighting Server Emerlev, who's 24-2 for the WBO Global Light Heavyweight title. And that's what's going on over in the UK. I think there's one other card. Some crazy records on this card. Not really spectacular. The main event is somebody who's got to go, but it's 9-0-1 against 7-0. Liam Dillon is 9-0-1. Dennis Wahome is 7-0 at super featherweight. They got a guy on this card, Louis Van Poach. His record is 9-133-2. And it's not Harry. But
Wow.
Henry Potter is on the United Kingdom card here at welterweight. Henry Potter against Fons Alexander, who is 7-114 with no draws.
Wow. He's no quitter. He's no quitter.
But get this, guys. This might be the first time in the Fight News Unlimited sports show history where we do a somebody's O's got to go fight on the other side. We have in Lancashire, United Kingdom, a main event no less between 0-1 Anthony Phytian, Phythian, against Scott Williams, who is 0-18-0. 0-1 versus 0-18. And guess
Well, it could be a draw. It could be a draw. Think about it.
Yeah, right. Well, they got zeros on both sides.
But I'd love to have a film of that one. I'd love to be watching that one. That would be classic.
The co-main event is even better. Sam Melville, he is 0-1, fighting Luke Fash, who is 2-66-2. And then we got a bunch of debuters. We got a debuting bunch. There's like 5 in a row here, 4 in a row. And they're all fighting guys with losing records. One of them is 7-115-2, Jamie Quinn. Yikes.
You almost think that's mathematically impossible.
Right? It's ridiculous. And then the other big card is in Germany. Robin Krasnicki at light heavyweight. This is a big one. He is 51-6, fighting Dominic Bozell, who is 31-2 for the IBO World Light Heavyweight title. And co-main event is a heavyweight fight. Peter Kadiru, 11-0, fighting Boris Estenfelder, who is 11-2-1. It's like there's a lot of heavyweights fighting this weekend. They got a cruiserweight fight too, worth mentioning. WBO Intercontinental Cruiserweight title on the line. We got Roman Fress, 13-0, fighting Luca Di Ortenzi, who's 15-1. Not much about either one of those guys. So that wraps it up there. But we got some news before we get into the MMA. We got some big news. Big news as far as bare knuckle boxing. We had a fighter that was in an unbelievably bad mismatch. Lasted just 19 seconds. And now a month out from the fight, he has died. So they actually officially put out a headline calling it an MMA death, which was like absolutely ridiculous. Totally different sport. But it's not so much the sport here, it's the mismatch. I think this guy had been out for years. Sort of like a freaking Nate Diaz situation, except this guy was never good. I shouldn't be saying that about the dead, but I mean, that's why he's dead. He was not, he shouldn't have ever even been in the situation. He hadn't won a single fight in 5 years. Let's see what else. He had a lifetime record of 6-18. And he went in against the guy that knocked him out in 19 seconds. In Biloxi, Mississippi on August 20th. Spent the next 6 weeks paralyzed and ultimately died from his injuries. So you hope this doesn't put like on a crazy stain on the sport, but I mean, this is kind of like, the first big shock for them. We've had a couple obscure mixed martial arts deaths in some of the small feeder leagues, but they were usually because of dehydration situations or long-term 5-round fights situations where guys took too much sustained punishment. This was 19 seconds and over with, so I don't know. I don't know how the guy got involved or how he was able to get this fight and why they set him up in this situation, but yeah, doesn't look like...
and then you have to wonder about underlying medical conditions, like
Yes.
what was the guy's lifestyle.
Yeah.
Trying to divide by guy from it.
Yeah, the guy's name was Justin Thornton. It was his 6th consecutive first-round stoppage, too. 38 years old. He survived the first 5, but not the 6, obviously. Yeah, there needs to be more regulation in those situations, especially like stoppages like that. 6 first-rounders. Yeah, somebody should have told him that he's not good at it. He needs to hang it up. But the guy looked like a physical beast, so I can understand how people could be misconstrued, thinking, "Oh, geez, this guy definitely can fight." He looks the part, but he obviously didn't come prepared.
Yeah, and like I said, looks don't always matter, because like if he did, you would see a guy like Deontay Wilder, and you'd think he would, kill a guy like Tyson Fury because of the fact that Fury has a little bit of the love handles hanging off, and doesn't look like a physical specimen like Wilder does. I remember we'd have guys that would come into our gym at Lock Haven that were like big football players, great athletes. They couldn't last 30 seconds, and there was a trained fighter that was 30.
And it's not really on the same along the same lines, but we have a situation with Triller now. They had to pull the plug on Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos Jr. They went into default on the agreement somehow. So now it's actually being transferred, or it's being picked up by Matchroom Sports. So it's going to be on TV on Sky Sports overseas. But, yeah. Triller is having problems. That last spectacle fight there with Evander Holyfield didn't do him any favors.
Yeah, right.
So now it looks like there's going to be some issues. Long-term survival is doubtful. Although we recently, I don't know if you guys follow the news real close lately, but there was a situation where there was a company called Ozzy. And they were saying, like, all over the news it was a fraud, it exploded, they were going to shut it down. And then, like, 3 days later, they were like, oh, they found funding. They're going to keep it open. What the hell is going on? All of a sudden, it just disappeared, like it was no big thing. I don't know if we're going to see that with Triller, but it's looking more and more like the freak show they're trying to promote half the time. The whole thing. Frank Gore back in the news for preparing for his first boxing match. We talked a little bit about that last week. And speaking of Triller, Mike Tyson wants $100 million for his next boxing match. And I know who he wants to fight, but who he really wants to fight, but he's saying he wants $100 million to fight Logan Paul. Which I know he'll kill him.
Logan Paul, huh?
He'll ruin him.
Oh my God.
Makes no sense at all to do that fight, except for money-wise. Because that's what he's saying. He knows that these guys have so many followers that they will get the fight up there, and it's low risk. But I think the fight he really, really, really wants right now, more than any other fight, is Lennox Lewis, who has talked about making an official comeback.
You knew it wouldn't be Holyfield now.
No.
After that disaster. Thinking Lennox Lewis.
Lennox Lewis. People will pay for that, too.
Oh, God, yeah. People will pay for Mike Tyson, to check box. You know, you put him in there with Logan Paul. You know, Mike Tyson's like, well, it'll make a lot of money because of Logan Paul. No, well, it'll make a lot of money because of Mike Tyson.
Right.
You know, Logan Paul might help because of the, you know, his YouTube followers. But, you know, the real cash.
Logan Paul is like the real Glass Joe. It's fucking. That's what it'll look like in there too. Jesus. They should not. They should not even sanction that fight. But one they're definitely going to sanction: Terence Crawford versus Sean Porter. This was recently announced.
Very exciting there.
We know Terence has had trouble finding good opponents, but this will be an exception to the rule. Although Sean Porter might be a little bit nudged outside the ring now because he's doing a lot of announcing work and commentary stuff. And you know, I'm not saying he's not working in the gym and everything, but and he's always been in shape since we freaking interviewed him the first time when he was like 10-0. He's always been like a guy that comes in shape and never has cardio issues in fights. He's just always there and always punching. But you know, you just wonder with guys like that. They got the cushy job. They don't really have to work. Like, how hard are they working? You just have to naturally wonder if he's just doing this because the big money opportunity came by and he's available and nobody else will fight Crawford, or if he's doing this because he really is committed to winning. You know, I don't know. We'll find out, I'm sure, when this fight happens. But
only he knows. But I think this is really style versus style, because Crawford likes the counter punch and be right there smothering him. Crawford needs space, so this will be really interesting.
You know what Sean Porter reminds me a lot of? Go back and look at the fights where he's struggled a little bit, or maybe some of the fights that he lost. He reminds me a lot of Shane Mosley, when Mosley would fight somebody like, what was the boy that beat him twice? So Vernon Forrest. If you go back and you look at Mosley, when he fought guys like Vernon Forrest, when he fought guys like Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, even though he was getting later in his career, he would bounce a lot and he'd roll his hands a lot, but he wouldn't throw a lot of punches. And I know there were certain times in Sean Porter's had some fights where he looked really good, like when he got Paulie Malignaggi. He's had some other fights in there where he looked really, really good. Then he's had some other fights, even if they weren't against elite competition, where he looked herky-jerky, where he was bouncing a lot, he was rolling his hands, but he wasn't throwing punches. And I was like, he's right now, he's almost fighting like Shane Mosley would do in some of those fights where he was struggling with maybe a guy was taller or had longer arm, a real tight defense where you were rolling your arms, rolling your hands, bouncing, looking for the perfect punch that wasn't opening up. And so that's almost like a Jekyll and Hyde order that I see. And I can see Terence Crawford exploiting that, where, you know, he doesn't give Porter the opening that he wants, and then he counters off the hand roll that he's doing. I remember Trainer told me that. He goes, be careful when you do a lot of that hand roll. And yeah, but it can also be timed.
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking of how Porter looked in that Ugas fight. You know, it was a different version of it. That's a good point.
It's funny you say,
well,
you know, you have a fighter that he reminds you of. For me, when I think of Sean Porter, I think his major weakness is he fights a little like Manny Pacquiao sometimes with both hands out. He's so eager to throw the next punch, he leaves both hands down. And I think that's his biggest flaw, is that he's just so committed to always punching. He forgets defense. He's like, you know, a face-first type of fighter sometimes, because he just loves to punch, right? And like thinks about defense last. So, you know, against a guy like Crawford, who is just known for just brutal, brilliant power punching, counter punching, it's going to be a problem. So, I don't know. I wonder, like, how committed he is. Because if he's totally committed and he's willing to adapt his style a little bit for that type of technician, he could win this fight. Sean Porter could definitely win. I'm not saying he's, like, past his prime or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, because he's got the nice cushy gig as an announcer that he can always fall back on. Like, how committed is he to, like, doing this to be champion and defend that belt, like, or be the top dog in the pound for pound position that's going to put him in to win. I don't know. We'll find out, But every boxer, gets to that point, wants to keep going if they can, So maybe this is that fight that just proves to him whether he still has it or not. Because he's been doing it a long time. And, it's a good gig that he's got with, premier boxing champions. He does a lot of announcing with them and Showtime and all that, so who knows? We'll see. I'm sure the boxing match pays a little bit better, but we'll find out how serious he is when that's November 20th is the date for that fight, so keep that on your calendar. And then the other big story we have, it's going to be in the form of a quiz question here, guys. I'm going to see if you can guess who the fighter is. I'm going to give you the headline, and I'm going to give you one hint, that he's a former guest of ours. Okay? Both of us, all three of us were on the call. As miserable as it was, I'll give you that clue too. Okay? MMA fighter, brutally knocked out as he loses 17th straight fight, leaving fans worried. Who are we talking about? Can you guess? An MMA fighter knocked out 17th straight fight. Lost 17 straight fights. Knocked out all 17.
Okay, so he's been knocked out in his last 17 fights?
No, he was knocked out losing his 17th straight fight, but he's lost 17 straight, not all by knockout.
Oh.
That's an example of bad headline making right there.
Yeah. Okay, 17 losses in a row.
He was a guest of ours, and he was a bad guest. He was not a very good guest. Those are the clues you have.
Well, I got it. Ding, 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 ding. Great award.
Who is it?
Right? Charles Bennett.
Charles Bennett, yes, you got it. Charles Bennett.
Wow.
Sad story.
Was he the one that was like on the other line the whole time and like forgot that he was on a call with us?
Yeah, like he was just obviously like drunk or high or something, and we got like 6 words out of
him. A crack pipe.
It was bad. And then I read the article, and it turns out he was a drug dealer before he was an MMA fighter. That's how he got the nickname Felony. Charles Felony Bennett. That's his record now. His name now. So this one is in a bare knuckle fight against Rob Emerson. And he got knocked out standing up against the cage and then fell down. But yeah, it was in the first round. And obviously, people were a little bit worried after seeing that. So yeah. That's not the... So, I mean, we just talked about a guy who died in a similar situation. Not even that many fights in a row lost. 6 fights in a row he lost in the first round, but... I mean, those were all stoppages. This one, I don't know about Charles, but... Yeah, it's not a good look for him. And that's it for boxing and MMA news, but we do have a wrestling story. Junior Dos Santos is going to make his pro wrestling debut for All Elite Wrestling, AEW.
Nice. They were in Philly last night.
God knows he does not need to be getting any concussions again in MMA, but we hope that the wrestling is a little easier on him. He did a lot of zombie fighting in his prime in the UFC, and I worried a lot about that because he had some interviews where he even talked about like forgetting entire rounds. So I know that, but wrestling is kind of just as dangerous depending on what kind of moves they're going to put you through, but who knows?
Well, yeah, I mean, because you figure you're getting body slammed, you're getting like back body drops, you're getting a lot of moves that will concuss your brain. Then they don't do the steel chair shots to the head anymore. They've kind of outlawed them. But, when you're still getting picked up, you're still getting slammed, you're getting thrown off the top rope. One of the most dangerous moves of all time, which ended up leading to Chris Benoit's, chronic traumatic brain injury, was the diving headbutt. So it was an offensive move that he did where he would jump off the top rope and he would do like a headbutt to the shoulder. And it never looked like he was connecting like that, whatever, but I guess you were still, even though the way you were landing, I guess your head was still making contact with the body, and even though you weren't knocking yourself loopy per se, you were still hitting a human being's shoulder and torso with your head.
Yeah.
And,
it's not necessarily the force of the hit all the time. Because what really causes a concussion is your brain slapping against your skull. So it doesn't necessarily matter. Like when George Foreman knocked out Michael Moore, that was not like a punch that would knock out most people, but it was just right on the button, and it turned his head just enough to make that brain slap against the side of his head. So, it might not look like it's a hard impact when he does it, but it's just that motion, that snap of that sudden movement that sends the brain against the skull. So, and that's why they have so many concussions that don't get diagnosed, because it can be very slight, and then all of a sudden, like 3 hours later, you got the symptoms. It doesn't even have to affect you immediately. So that was, it's just, with a guy with a brain that's already been through a lot in MMA, you've got to worry about a guy like Dos Santos doing it at that high level, because they're going to use his star power for that, to put him in all the big, huge matches with the biggest wrestlers who've done it forever.
And Dr. Cox would talk about, getting hit and, how the different punches, and he goes, you get hit with like a right cross that hits you on the side of the chin, and how it jolts you. He goes, but then also you get hit with a straight right hand, which snaps your head back, which puts the brain to the back of your head, and then when your head snaps back front, your brain moves and hits the front of your skull.
Yep. So Dos Santos is going to be in a 6-man tag match, partnering with AEW wrestlers Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky against pro wrestling legend Chris Jericho, Jake Hager, and Sammy Guevara. UFC star Jorge Masvidal will be in his team's corner as well. I don't know what that means. But
we need tag teams in boxing and MMA. We need those tag teams.
We do have it in MMA, don't we? I've seen it. I've seen it done in MMA already. It's brutal. It's only a second to the team fighting events that are absolutely ridiculous. But it's bad stuff. It's crazy. Anyway, there have been 17 UFC heavyweight champions in history, and Dos Santos is going to be the 11th former UFC heavyweight champion to perform in a pro wrestling match. There's a fun fact for you. Left the UFC after 4 straight losses, although of course many of them were from top contenders. Anyway, crazy. So now we go to UFC. We had I had a tough one there, putting my cards together on this one. I put a little too much weight on the co-main event and the main event. Should not have picked either fight, because the co-main event turned out to be a no contest between Kevin Holland and Kyle Daukaus. And I had a little too much faith in Kevin Holland. I watched the pre-fight stuff, the UFC pre-fight shit, and they were hyping Kevin Holland like he was going to win, and I should have thought a little bit more about the brother Daukaus just getting his big win, and Kyle Daukaus showed a lot of talent in there. There was a big head clash. It was obviously they stopped it and then went through back to the judges and the referees and the video officials to look at it, because of the head clash. Actually, Flash knocked out Kevin Holland, but when he hit the mat, he woke up and he started wrestling back. So the referee let it go, and then Kyle Daukaus, in Kevin Holland's compromised condition, where he was a little woozy, was able to get a submission in. Now, nobody can say that Kyle Daukaus wouldn't have got that anyway. Nobody. But at the same time, you could argue, you could make the point that Kevin Holland wouldn't have been in that position if he hadn't been almost knocked out by a head clash. So, right thing's right, they got to make it a no contest. I understand they had to do that, but it was just very disappointing because I needed the points on that fight to get any money on my cards. But I got a couple good ones right. I knew that Jamie Malarkey and Devontae Smith, that was another one where they had a pretty high percentage of knockouts. I knew one of those guys was going to get a knockout win. So I had Jamie Malarkey, I believe, was the MVP on one of my cards. And now, if I got all the other ones right, I would have won the money. But it started to go downhill with a couple fights. It was that co-main event, and it was also Nico Price over Alex Oliveira. I had faith in the old Brazilian cowboy. I thought he was going to show up with a little more intensity, but he scored some points. He was doing some things right, but he just didn't seem to have the gas in the third round. That last takedown killed him because he was really,
Yeah, it was just the old cliche: a day late and a dollar short.
Yeah. It doesn't look half bad. I mean, he's still hanging in there. It's just, he's never going to be in a top 10 situation. Never going to fight for a belt. But, he's still got a little bit of left. He's still all right in there. It's just very underwhelming. I expected him to do much better than that. And Nico Price was coming off some pretty tough losses, too. So he really kind of needed that win. He got it. And then Krzysztof Jotko, that was sort of an upset there over Misha Serkinov, but that was a split decision anyway, so that wasn't going to factor into the points. Alexander Hernandez was a big favorite over Mike Breeden. So if you were going to pick him, even though he got the first round knockout, you're going to have to shell out like $23, which is like on the high end of the spectrum for FanDuel anyway. And then Jared Gordon beating Joe Solecki by split decision. I did stay away from that one. Casey O'Neill, I got her on one card over Antonina Shevchenko. That was a TKO, 4 minutes and 47 seconds into the second round. Carl Rosa over Betch Correia. That was her last fight, too. Betch Correia has retired. She looked a little bit like confused out there, Betch. Like somebody woke her up too early. It's definitely a good time for her to hang him up. Just her mentality about the whole thing. It was just like, she was consigned to going out there and getting through it, but she wasn't really committed anymore. And of course, Jamie Malarkey, as mentioned, he got the knockout 2 minutes and 51 seconds into the second round over Devontae Smith. And Douglas Silva de Andrade beating Gaetano Perello by knockout. That was a first round knockout, 2 minutes and 4 seconds in to the fight. And then Stephanie Egger, she was one you had to have. This was a lot of female fights mattered on this card. But you had to have Shanna Young losing to Stephanie Egger by TKO. That was 2 minutes and 22 seconds into the second round. Two's a while. Then the first fight of the night, I did get that right. Alejandro Perez over Johnny Eduardo by a scarf hold arm lock. 4 minutes and 13 seconds into round two. And then we had a very underwhelming main event, especially because it was only 3 rounds, over in Bellator. And it was also taped, and they played it late on Showtime. So you knew all the results before it happened. It was kind of like, I didn't even want to watch it, so I put it on the DVR to tape it, and the fight went past the limit for the scheduling on the little computer board where you hit record, right? So it got to like halfway through the third round and the tape ended. So I couldn't even watch it. I was a little bit pissed, but I was watching it. I really didn't see anything I liked out of either fighter. I mean, like, Douglas Lima ended up losing by split decision, but, they made it look more close in the decision than I saw in the fight. Michael was just basically pot-shotting, being very careful, because Lima has knocked him out, so he was being very cautious, and not much of the dynamic spinning stuff. If you did any of it, it really wasn't landing that good. Landed a few nice kicks, a few long-range punches, but he's just being very careful. It was kind of upsetting, because you know what kind of power the guy has, what kind of ability the guy has, and he just didn't take any risks whatsoever. And this is supposed to be the guy that's like incredible, unstoppable, unbelievable, and just didn't show us much. So yeah, and it was in London too. He's from that area, so you'd think he would give more, but I think he was upset with himself too after the fight. Anyway, Douglas Lima did enough for at least one judge to win the fight, 29-28. The other two judges had it 29-28 for Page. Co-main event was Leah McCourt beating Jessica Borga by unanimous decision. And then we had an eye poke, no contest. Robert Whiteford and Andrew Fisher, that was stopped in the second round. Luke Traynor beating Yannick Bahati before that by TKO, elbow and punches. 2 minutes and 50 seconds into the second round. And we had Tim Wilde over Yves Landau by unanimous decision. And Lewis Long before that beating Michael Dubois by rear naked choke submission. Just 41 seconds into that fight. Davey Gallen before that over Kane Musa by unanimous decision. We had a heel hook submission for Elena Kalianidou over Petra Kastakova. That was in the first round. Jack Grant over Nathan Jones by TKO first round. Fabakari Diata over Nathan Rose by unanimous decision. And here's the first two. Chiara Penko over Katharina Delizda by armbar submission first round. And then Khurshid Kakarov over Jair Jr. by unanimous decision. The first fight of the night. We have really only one card this weekend. Unless we got... Do we have PFL back this weekend? Thinking that's coming up. Check that in a minute. But we have UFC Fight Night 194. Marina Rodriguez versus Mackenzie Dern is the main event. That's going to be 5 rounds. And it's never failed. I mean, I broke the rule myself on a couple of my lineups, but it's never failed in the last 6 or 7 fights I've watched. If you do a FanDuel lineup, you have to pick one of those female fighters because they always factor in. One of those female fighters is going to get a knockout. That's going to factor in. It just seems like it always happens. Because before the last 5 or 6 years when a lot of women got involved in the UFC because of the whole Ronda Rousey thing and just the absolute focus on it opening up, got a lot of women involved. So now you see 3 or 4 women sometimes, women fights on a card. And this one's got 3 of them, including the main event. So this is definitely going to have one of those fights factor in. The big knockout. But anyway, the main event is Marina Rodriguez 14-1-2 against Mackenzie Dern, who's 11-1. Mackenzie sort of like a mostly jiu-jitsu wrestling style fighter. I don't know much about Marina, but she's only got the 1 loss, so does Mackenzie. Rodriguez, she's got 2 draws too. So it sounds like she's more of a technical fighter. And goes the distance a lot, but we'll see what happens in that one. Co-main event, Randy Brown 13-4 against Jared Gooden, who's 18-6. And we were supposed to get Randy Brown on the show, believe it or not. He was supposed to be already interviewed. We were supposed to do it last week. I didn't end up telling you guys because I had such a problem getting to his manager. But, the PR person reached out to me and wanted to know if we wanted to interview him. And I was like, sure thing. And then he just dropped off the radar. So I don't know what's going on there. But Randy Brown is in the co-main event, 13-4, fighting Jared Gooden, 18-6. I don't know, maybe he found ZionSucks.com. That could have been the issue.
We'll get this interview.
Yeah. Anyway, Tim Elliott is also on the card. He's 17-11-1, fighting Mateus Nicolau, who's 16-2-1. We've got Sabina Mazau, who's 9-2, fighting Maria Agapova, 9-2 as well. And Phil Hawes, 11-2, fighting Duran Wynn, who's 7-2. Chris Gutierrez, 16-4 with 2 draws, fighting Felipe Diaz-Calares, who's 10-2. Alexander Romanov, 14-0, fighting Jared Vandera, who's 12-5. We got Charles Rosa, 14-5, fighting Damon Jackson, who's 18-4-1. Lupita Godinez, 5-1, fighting Silvana Gomez Juarez, who is 10-2. And first fight of the night, Steve Garcia, 11-4, fighting Charlie Ontiveros, who's 11-7. So this is only a 10-fight card, and from all my experience, there's not much in the FanDuel leagues, and it's also on a little bit on DraftKings. They got a different system over there, but it's only slightly different. But the fight cards with 13, 14 fights on are obviously going to be a lot harder to get the optimal lineup on. But any fight that's like 9 or 10 fights on the card, it's a lot better. Especially because that there might be like 2 or 3 cancellations of fights before the event, like the day before, because of weigh-ins or whatever other situation comes up, COVID. So sometimes if you just watch it right before it locks, and you make sure you get that person off the card if their fight got canceled, you got a way better chance of winning than half the people, because half the people don't do it. They don't stay on top of it. And I did it last week. I had a fighter on there that was the fight got canceled, that Aspen lad bitch that didn't make weight. So yeah, that's my tip of the week for FanDuelers, to make sure you watch these cards for cancellations, and check when you sign up for the fight card to pick your lineup. Make sure you check when it locks, so that you can get on there just beforehand and check what fights have been canceled and make your adjustments before fight time. Now, one of these days I'm going to win. I came close a few weeks ago. It's just that one main event I needed Ortega to pull it off. They needed the miracle submission to get locked in, but oh well. It is what it is. Alright, so unless you guys got any other surprise stories, I think we've covered it all.
No, nothing surprising on my end. Just looking forward to some good fights this weekend. I don't know if I will make it home in time for the card, so I might have to order it and then hopefully get home in time for the main event. I'm at a show this weekend that's been postponed 3 times.
Oh boy.
That I'm taking family and friends to. Yeah, it was supposed to be. It's the Bronx Tale Show, the one-man stage show.
Yep.
And I've seen it a couple times already, and they're bringing it to my hometown where I grew up. And we bought these tickets. It literally came up in my Facebook memories 2 years ago last week that I bought them. And this was in March of 2020, postponed. July of 2020, postponed. April of 2021, postponed. So finally, in 48 hours, I was like, oh, thank God it's over. I just go and get it over with now. I had a guest that I was supposed to bring with me. She can't make it. The other girl's like, I'll go with you. What the fuck you will? I don't mince words very well. And one girl was getting on my bad side down the shore the other week. And I'm like, dude, why you gotta come here and cause bullshit, Well, I'll go with you to this. I'm like, oh, so you can get a free ticket and a free meal. How about no? I'll sit by myself. It's going to be in a dick. I'm like, no, thank you. I don't pull punches. That's what a fighter does. A fighter doesn't pull punches, right?
Exactly.
If I was boxing you right now and I'm pulling punches, you're going to win. Yep.
I've used that quote in a situation in the media when I was working for a newspaper, and the chief of police was trying to hide a little scandal on me. And they had like a whole meeting with my editors and everything, and I said to the chief, I'm not going to pull punches. Just because this guy is friends with your family, you're trying to cover up the scandal, doesn't mean I'm not going to go after him and try to report the truth.
Right.
But they never let me publish a story about it, because supposedly there were no laws broken, but it was basically a school resource officer trying to screw around with the high school girls. And because the girls that he did screw around with were over 18, they just basically let him resign quietly. And I only found out about the story because my insurance agent had a wife that worked at the school as a teacher. And she found out that the school resource officer was calling the school looking for references rather than the police department. So he was trying to go to a different school. It's just troubling, you know. You don't want that to happen in that situation. Well, that was before Me Too, so. I bet if it was Me Too times, that guy would be all over the papers. Times change. Anyway, on that note.
So, before we get off the air, I'm going to hit Tom's crystal ball again. So, Tom, I'm still doing my 500-mile challenge. I just completed my, actually, I haven't completed my 4th week. I'm in my 4th week. So, you figure 3 full weeks, and we won't even count today because today's not technically over yet, but 3 full weeks and 3 days. So, about 24 days. Would you like to guess how I've done?
330 miles.
Man, wow, I wish I was that good. I'm at about 200. So I'm averaging about 8 miles a day.
Okay. I had you just a little too quick. Hey, you like with an engine there or something. Oh, man. Well, you'll get there.
When I was 18 days into it, my one friend's like, what are you, about 360? I'm like, dude, I'm not driving this. I am walking this and running this. I'm not averaging. I'm like, bro, you know me. You know I'm not averaging 20 miles a day. And then he's like, oh, that's a good thing. And we lost as well. Oh, and before I forget, I do have one more thing to end the show with. So I was talking to him the other night. I said, yo, bro, I said I was running on the treadmill, and the belt snapped. Because I was using my treadmill downstairs the one night. I'm like, the belt snapped when I was about 2 miles into it. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah. I almost flung myself into the console piece. And I said, I thought I was going to hyperextend my knee. And I was like, shit, I got 300 and like some miles to go. I was like, Mike, I was going to have to tag you in. You were going to have to do the last 300 miles for me. He goes, man, you really are working on that stand-up. We're really working on. You really are trying to be a stand-up comedian, aren't you? So we had a good laugh on that. I go to the gym the next night. I'm on the treadmill. I get another one where the belt was bad. I'm like, what the fuck, dude? I'm at 2 treadmills in 2 different places on 2 consecutive nights with 2 bad belts.
I guess too many fat people are there before you.
What I end the night with was, yeah. You know, last week they just broke the trailer for the new Rocky recut of Rocky 4. So I'm over with my friend Mike's the other night, and we're talking about it, and so we're
Russell Wilson.
we're like, hey, let's pull up YouTube on the TV and we'll watch the trailer. So we put the trailer on, and then we're watching different clips on YouTube from Rocky 4. We're watching when Paulie's doing whatever and he's saying something, and we're watching the scene. So we're in there, we're watching the scene where Apollo does the big entrance to James Brown Living in America.
Yeah.
And little Dominic's in there, and he's sitting up at the table. He's like, what's on TV? And we're like, that's Rocky. Oh, but I don't like Rocky. I was like, yo, you go wash your mouth out with soap right now. I said, kid, I will go ungodfather you right now. I will take you to the church. It's only a mile away. And wipe off the oil that I put on your head 4 years ago. And he looked at me and he goes, oh, who's that guy on TV? I said, that's Apollo Creed. He goes, he dresses like you.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, he does. Yes, he does.
Congratulations on your birthday present, by the way. It looks good. Your birthday present.
Oh, you like that?
Yourself.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. You know, the only thing I was a little disappointed on is it's lighter. You know, it's lighter than the Walmart belt or the Toys R Us belt that I bought a couple years ago. And the picture is like lasered on instead of engraved. So it's like if you tilt it a certain way, you just see like it looks like a blank screen. You got to tilt it a certain way to see the images. And like I said, it's not as heavy as you know the other one had, but hey, it looks cool, and you know that's I guess that's all that matters, right?
Ooh, what the fuck? I'm watching a football game in Russell Wilson just like dislocated his finger bad.
Yeah, I saw it. Well, I picked the Rams, so I kind of need them to win.
All right.
Hey, it looks like Vinny on TV.
There you go. All right, guys. Till next week. Thanks for stopping
All right, guys. Enjoy the fight.
We'll discuss this big fight. All right. See you later.
Adios.